We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. What a great and amazing turnout. We have 42 people on the call, and this is wonderful. You know, as a career counselor, I'm a career counselor at the School of Business, and, you know, normally during the summer, we have students say adios, USD, but I'm happy that we can be all here today to be learning some additional information about marketing. I'll go ahead and introduce the panelists, but I just want to start out with some ground rules. A couple things, you know, during COVID times, it's difficult to really network with individuals. So I do, for those of you that feel comfortable, I want to encourage you to turn on your cameras. You will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. But to really, in the spirit of networking, I want to encourage you to turn your cameras on. It's very different from a classroom environment where you can just listen. So please do that. The second thing is that the format is going to be, the first 10 minutes is going to be introductions. And then we're going to go into about 4 different questions, kind of blanketed, broad questions, so that each individual can kind of answer specific to their own experiences. And then at the end, we will have 10 minutes for asking questions. And for those of you that do have questions, you can just privately chat them to me in the chat below in the Zoom chat experience so that I can ask them. We're hopeful that all the panelists can kind of keep their answers to 2 minutes because we have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of information to cover. And also, for those of you, hopefully this is okay, but I had included LinkedIn profiles for people on the invite for all of our panelists. So I encourage you to reach out to them. Hopefully it's not overwhelming if you do have additional questions. Again, COVID times require a different type of networking. So please let me know how I can be of assistance to you. You can, for those of you that have questions after today or want to kind of be working on your resume and things this summer, please feel free to make an appointment with me through Handshake. We have appointments all summer. So I'm going to go ahead and just do some quick introductions. I'll let each one speak for themselves, but we have 4 panelists today. Our first one is Hannah Poog. She is currently a people analytics partner. She works at Adobe in New York City. We have Alex Smith-Farina, who is an account manager for consumer technologies at NPD Group. We have Hannah McCune, who is an account manager for the Coast Creative, and Daniel Guerra, who is a growth marketing manager at Vincero Watches. So who'd like to go first in introducing themselves? If you could please just share a little bit about who you are and what's the general gist of your job. Daniel, would you like to go first?
Sure, happy to go first. So as Kelly said, I work as the growth marketing manager for Vincero Watches. We're an e-commerce based brand. You know, we work internationally in terms of our audience. My job in a nutshell is essentially creating as many profitable partnerships as we possibly can. So we like to consider 2 different types of marketing, programmatic and non-programmatic. So programmatic is your Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads that you guys are very familiar with, I'm sure. My job is to do everything outside of that. So whether it's, you know, in-home experiences, billboarding, influencers, direct mailers, you name it. My job is to find as many opportunities as we can and leverage those opportunities into marketing, so branding, advertising, etc. And I try to lock them in yearly, so I get to play with a big budget, which is really nice. And so my job is to manage all those partnerships across the board for an e-commerce brand.
One of the Hannahs, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'll go. I'm Hannah McCune. Like Kelly said, I'm an account manager at the Coast Creative, which is a startup marketing agency that's based out of North Park, right here in San Diego. While my official title is account manager, because we're a startup, I kind of have multiple titles. So the account manager leg of it is just overseeing basically my small team, keeping in constant communication with clients, making sure that relationship is really solid. In that vein, I also develop a lot of the strategy for my clients and kind of with that as well as the project management for specific projects and things like that, I guess, going on at the time. So a lot of different variables and different pieces to my job because like I said, we're a startup. A lot of the clients that we serve to are a lot of local San Diego clients, a lot of hospitality clients, some e-commerce mixed in the bucket as well. I myself have about 8 clients right now that kind of are all sorts of different types of businesses, like I mentioned. And so it's a really cool experience being able to serve so many different types of people. And so that's kind of like one of the things I like most about my job. It makes it really exciting. So
Thank you. Hannah or Alex?
I think Hannah, you're muted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I don't use Zoom at work, so this happens every time I join a Zoom call because I call in from my phone. Otherwise, my laptop just doesn't work out very well with it. So anyway, thanks for that. So I'm Hannah Pooge, and I graduated USD, I guess, 5 years ago. I don't know. I guess the class of 2015. And ever since then, I've been at Adobe. I'm not in marketing, so I'm kind of the oddball out, but I was a marketing major. So I guess that's what makes me relevant. And I'm a people analytics partner, which is essentially a, employee data analyst. So I understand employee trends, why people come, why people go, how does our workforce change, what causes our workforce to change, how do we retain, different levers that we have to engage employees and understand, their sentiment. So across a variety of things, and I support specific business units. So one of the units I support is marketing, as well as all the corporate functions, finance, legal, HR, which we call employee experience, as well as our head of D&I. So in my day-to-day really encompasses, meeting with different stakeholders, understanding what their needs are, what are the employee issues, not issues, but what are the, employee, trends or really business problems that we want to solve, and then understanding how the people fit into that and how we can understand what's going on with our workforce there. So I actually started off in headquarters in the Bay Area in San Jose, and about a year and a half ago, I moved to New York. So now I'm based out of New York in their New York office.
Great, thanks.
Hi, so I'm Alex. I graduated from USD in 2020, actually, so last year. This is my first job out of college. I work for the MPD Group, which is a market research firm that's been privately held for 50 years. We're based globally. So what our company does essentially is we sell data and information to other companies that then make the strategic business decisions on what they're going to do next, how they're going to expand their products, are they going to discontinue product lines, how are they going to sell, what retailers are they going to move into. So we're really the person that gives them the information to help support those business decisions. A lot of our information is used by executive boards to make their decisions, and essentially where I fit in all this process is I'm the client-facing role. So I will help them figure out like what data source is going to be the most valuable to them, like what channel they need to be in, and like kind of advise them there and point them in the right direction using our information to help make those decisions. And so just supporting my team as a whole too as well is a lot of my job, and making sure we are able to keep our processes flow, because we manage about, I want to say 50 clients on my team. So we do pull a lot of work and do a lot of weight, but we get to talk to a lot of different people, and we work specifically, at least for my position, in the technology sector. So working with like a lot of different players from big, small companies. So yeah, it's a lot, but it's really interesting, and we learn a lot about the market through a market research position.
Great, thank you, everybody. Well, let's hop into our first question. If we could just maybe go in the order that we went in for introductions, I think that'll be easiest. What was your experience like going from a student to a professional?
My experience was, I guess, a bit unique because I took a position at a marketing agency before I graduated. So it was my senior year at USD, and I took a position where I was working about 30 hours a week. I did have a lighter, class load at that point. So it was nice to be able to kind of ease my way into the professional world. And so I started out with the marketing agency, and shortly after I graduated, I continued on with them. But I think the biggest difference for me was the gap in learning and like actual experience, which I think all of us would probably attest to on some level or another. But it was pretty seamless for me, which was nice to be able to have, something to before I graduated, which I know that a lot of marketing majors don't necessarily have right away because it is such a competitive field, but it is something that I like highly recommend to just go through and start searching like as early as you can and get your feet wet. I did start as an intern and then I eventually took a position. So, but my position was pretty seamless and unique, but it was really exciting. But there's definitely a lot of learning I still had to do from what I was learning in the classroom to being hands-on in the space and in the marketing agency. I think similar to what Hannah was doing, I was also managing kind of a slew of clients that was just like a little overwhelming at first. So overwhelming, but exciting and really fun.
Yeah, I actually had a really similar experience to Daniel. Summer before my senior year, I got my first like agency internship, and that actually turned into like a part-time job right after college. And I eventually switched to a new agency that was a little bit more full-time and a little bit like gave me the ability to grow a little bit better. But because of that like initial experience, mine was also pretty seamless. I had a really great mentor that didn't treat me like the intern. She treated me like any other kind of employee and like held me to the same standard. And so transitioning out of like, oh yeah, you know, I'm juggling school and this internship into like, okay, this is like what I'm doing 30, 40 hours a week, was fairly easy. And I really like thank my mentor at that time for a lot of it. Something that like, I feel like maybe it took me a minute to realize was that like, when you're an intern and you're like just starting out, you think like, you know, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, like my actions maybe don't have like a huge impact on the company relative to like, obviously maybe someone higher than me or anything like that. But then when you kind of start into that first like very permanent role, you realize that like, okay, now my actions really do have an impact. There's people relying on me who will also be impacted by my decisions and things like that. And like, you really do hold more weight than you think. And you just need to hold yourself accountable, hold yourself responsible, and just know that like the decisions that you're making now, and probably also when you're an intern, but obviously more so now in like this more permanent role, no matter like how big or small your role is, will definitely have an impact. And it's not just like you doing your own thing, like you're part of like a bigger unit and a bigger system. And so once you like fully understand that and know that like that's like how you need to operate, whether it's like a team of 5 or a team of 30, getting your head wrapped around that, I think really does help as well.
So I would say my transition was, it feels like a million years ago. It really wasn't that long, but it was, I'd say a little nerve-wracking because when I got the job, when I got there, I remember starting and feeling like something had gone wrong. Like, how did I get the job? Because I was at like this big company that was really well known, and I'd interned at a company that nobody had heard of, nobody still has heard of. It was like 7 people and there was not HR. I mean, it was like not if HR had been there, the company would not exist. It just was like a real startup. I did not get paid. So I thought, how did I go from having an unpaid internship where I literally set up, I mean, I didn't even know how I did what I did there. Essentially, that's what got me my job. But when I got to Adobe, I remember thinking like, oh my God, I don't know how I got here, but just like keep going. And so it was like a little nerve-wracking in that sense. But I would say, you know, otherwise, I mean, they really made the experience like very seamless. And I would say the only thing that I didn't really think about being a student to, you know, working full time is that what really changes is that you prioritize your time. And in a sense, you set your own deadline. So, you know, obviously there's some things where, you know, a client needs something or, you know, it's the end of the quarter, I have to report out on quarter end numbers. But there's other things where you're juggling multiple priorities and they're all kind of equally important. And you really have to own that and you have to own that decision. Whereas in school, you know, even though you still have to figure out how to balance your time, it's a little bit different. And, you know, it all kind of will just, in a sense, impact you. I mean, of course, other than group projects and stuff, but, you know, the decisions you make to prioritize and how you spend your time, you know, can impact other stakeholders and, you know, other team members. So I would say that that was kind of the only biggest difference. And that's not really something, I don't really believe someone can truly like teach you how to do that in a classroom. I think it's just something you learn through experience. And so, you know, I just remember that. And it's still something I think, you know, I learn every day as priorities change and, you know, your time gets taken up with more meetings or less meetings. That's always, you know, something I'm still learning and working on.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my transition, I mean, it's pretty interesting because like I started work and now like we're in a global pandemic. Like this is my first year of professional experience. Like we've gone remote. So I think my experience is probably unique to be like one of the first, like to be someone in my first year working, experiencing all these like worldwide global events that like do affect everyone's work days and like obviously our businesses. So I'd say like when I started, like everything was really seamless. Like I did onboarding in New York where we're headquartered. So like I got to meet like a lot of people and get like great interaction internally to network. And so I think for my transition, what I realized was really pivotal from really going from like that student life into my work life was also like not being looked at as someone who just came from college anymore in my organization, like not being so entry level and like learning how to pivot that role and not be seen like that. Because when you're entry level, it's like most people do come from college and like you just don't have a lot of industry expertise or like you don't have a lot of you just don't have a lot of experience. And so I think for me, like through this past year, like that's been what's the most important thing to me is like how do I grow out of that role and grow into what I'm doing now, but also be taken seriously and seen as professional in my organization being so young, because I am like one of the youngest people in my office. And that can be different depending on where you work too, but that just happens to be my situation. So that's what's been really important to me in my transition. And then obviously now like still maintaining like professionality and like growing, but like doing it now from home, right? Like, cause we're not going back into our offices at least. So that's been, I think, a part of my transition that's been really, really unique.
Great, thank you, Alex. So here's a big question. How did you figure out what you wanted to do, whether it was marketing or within marketing?
I guess I'm up first again. This was interesting for me because I thought I wanted to do accounting or finance. I knew I wanted to be in business pretty early on. So I started kind of down the accounting track. And then I realized, wow, I don't like numbers as much as I thought I do. But I still enjoyed business. And so I was pretty lucky in that I grew up kind of watching my mom as a marketing manager. And she always loved it. And she was such a people person. And I tend to be like a people person too. And so I was like, maybe I don't need to go down that route. And so I discovered probably my late sophomore year, summer between sophomore and junior year, that I was like, okay, marketing is what I'm going to fully dive into. And then before I graduated, I thought I had it figured out in terms of what I wanted to do. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would say too, is don't be afraid to like shift what you want to do, and think like, oh my gosh, I'm already like too late into this, or it's like I've been working at this agency doing this for this long and it's too soon to shift or pivot, because I don't want to change jobs, but there's an opportunity, I don't know what to do. It really was something that like I said, I was at the agency for a little bit, and then I realized I wanted to be in an in-house team, which is what I do now, working for a brand, e-commerce in the fashion space. And so I really sought that out. And so it just took a pivot. It took realizing like, I like doing what I'm currently doing, but it's not what I love. And so it's okay to shift or transition, and learn on the go. And even as I've been in this job, I start to learn about the things I actually enjoy, the things I don't enjoy. And so I continue to develop that passion and that desire in my career still. And I think that'll continue probably for the rest of my life.
So my story is also kind of funny. I basically spent the first half of my college career thinking I was going to be an engineering major. Basically, like through the end of sophomore year, I was dead set. And then I kind of had this like aha moment of like, I really don't love this. I'm forcing it. And so if anyone's thinking it's like too late to shift or change or anything, kind of like what Daniel said, like it's not, like anytime you choose to do it is the right time. And so I moved over to marketing because I knew I wanted to be more creative. And I kind of same thing as Daniel, like I wasn't as much of a numbers person as I thought I was, because in high school I was like, oh, I like math. The natural progression of that is to do engineering or something like that, but it wasn't the case for me. Yeah, I mean, so the simple transition was like, yeah, okay, I want to do business in general, but really me figuring out like I want to be like talking to people all the time, and I want to be creative, and I want to be hands-on and things like that. That's kind of where marketing naturally bubbled up for me, and kind of where I was able to solidify that a little bit more was my first internship right before senior year. And I was open and honest with them. I said like, this will be, if I get it, my first agency marketing kind of intern experience. I'm not 100% sure if this is it yet. This is like my trial run, and they were surprisingly receptive to that. It's also kind of why I chose like account management as an account manager, you touch almost everything. So I like oversee project management, I oversee strategy, I oversee people in the creative department, web development, like absolutely everything. And so that was also kind of my leg in to see like, if I get to touch a little bit of everything, you know, maybe I'll be able to narrow it down and that'll help me. Turns out I actually really enjoyed like account management as it is. And so that's what I've stuck through consistently since then. But basically, I mean, kind of where it all started was me just wanting to do a more creative role and a more people driven and people focused role.
So how did I figure it out? I would say that I don't think you really ever figure it out. And I think that's a humbling thing to keep in mind. Of course, unless, I mean, you know, you become a doctor or a lawyer, but even people who do that, they end up switching paths. I would say, you know, to take the pressure off yourself of trying to think what you want to do. I was so convinced I was going to take a marketing position. I don't even know if I could still tell you what that even means, because I think that's how little I knew. But I remember applying to jobs and I'm like, oh, I filtering on LinkedIn by marketing and looking for marketing. And I was like not getting any bites. And I wrote like so many, I mean, I probably wrote like 50 cover letters. I mean, it was like crazy and nothing. And so essentially, you know, I went on a field trip to Adobe. I went on a field trip where Adobe was one of the places, and I ended up talking to this recruiter and I was telling her, oh, I want to go into marketing, I want to go into sales, I want to do this. And then she's like, well, you know, we've closed all our positions, you know, and so I don't even remember what I said to her, to be honest. And then I was just telling her about my experience, and it turned out there was a role in HR. And essentially at that point, I realized that I cared more about going to a company that I feel like I could grow and develop this, because I really didn't know what I was going to do. So I thought, you know, I don't know anything about HR or HR technology. I'm not a tech person, and that's where I started in the HR tech. And, you know, just kind of thought, you know, this is an opportunity to grow and develop. And since I don't know what to do, I might as well learn. So I kind of totally shifted my, you know, attitude. And also it wasn't that I wasn't passionate about one thing or the other, but I think I realized that it's so hard. You know, you see so many job descriptions and job titles, and I think it's really hard to understand what the day-to-day looks like in that, even when the job description is written perfectly. So it's really, you know, really being in it, seeing it, of course, talking to people prior to. But yeah, so that was kind of how, so anyway, I ended up taking this job, and I've had like 4 roles, all in HR since I've been at Adobe. But, you know, and still sometimes I think I might want to go into sales or do something differently. But, you know, at the time I realized that since I didn't know anything, I might as well start somewhere.
Yeah, I kind of have, I think, definitely similar thoughts to Hannah, where it's like, I don't think I still know like what my dream job is, but I think it's just really identifying what skills you have that bring the best type of hand to the table, and then how are you going to find a job that lets you leverage those skills and like really excel in that type of way, instead of maybe asking, you know, instead of applying to a job that like really hones in on your weaknesses, like something that maybe you don't want to do. It's like important to keep in mind. So like how I really kind of determined more of like what those skills were and where to bring those skills was through internships. So I had an internship with Amazon. I was in logistics. I worked in a fulfillment center. I learned how you would operate a fulfillment center, what the area managers do, like, you know, like really what all the high level people are doing to like make that type of operation effective and work and like do 2-day delivery. So like that was all in like logistics and supply chain. I was like, you know, I don't really know if I want to be so internal. I think I want to be closer to like being external with the company. And so like that's more of like a consulting route or like getting closer to clients. And then I interned with CPC, which is originally CPC, but Tenuti now downtown, which is an agency, and really liked it. That was more on the client side. So then I was like, okay, I like talking to clients. I like doing analytical work and like working with data, but like, I don't know if I really want to do like traditional marketing. So that's how when I was doing my research, like I started finding like Nielsen, other market research companies where the goal's a little different. I'm not like managing their budgets. I'm more like helping them make business decisions at a higher level. Which I think for me was just like a little bit easier, like more natural for me to like fall into. And so that's how it helped me really narrow down my search, because those skills were a lot easier for me to even speak to in interviews and something I was more comfortable with, which I think really helped with me landing a job that like I was actually the right fit for, and like has helped me sustain my career now, because I'm moving into a new position where I'm doing something different, but I'm still using those skills. And so that's kind of how I navigated that process, and just talking to a lot of people along the way too.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so all of you have alluded to kind of what you learned in the classroom and what you learned on the job. What do you think are some skills that are needed? What are some skills that you think marketing students should try to acquire or learn while they're at USD that'll be beneficial to them in their marketing role in the future, or any role, I guess?
This is something I learned pretty early on, is that no matter what job or where you go, as much as you don't like or dislike or do love numbers, having a deep understanding of data and analytics is going to take you a long way, regardless of what job you take, particularly in the marketing field. Nowadays, it's not like traditional where, you know, maybe you're just managing a budget and that's about it. It's all about understanding the results of that. And so a lot of that's going to come from data and analytics. So I highly recommend taking some time to look what courses are available in terms of data, analytics, marketing analytics, all of that market research, and how to actually analyze the results. Those are skills that have gone a long way. So Google Analytics I use daily, right? Like things like any data tabs that you might think you're going to need, you probably will. So dive deep into the things that make you uncomfortable. So for me, those were making sure I understood data. The other thing I think is like just natural, like people and negotiation skills. Like you use negotiation skills all the time. I know that there's opportunity to take classes on sales, which naturally leads to, you know, negotiation. And it's not about necessarily that you're going to have to be negotiating daily or that you're going to be in sales, but it's just natural to understand. It's very beneficial to understand like how to communicate with people and how to actually like get a point across, and then how to understand them. So understand them first and then be understood second. So all of those types of skills, I think, lend themselves really well in the marketing space across the board, no matter where you land.
I'm trying to think, because like I said earlier, I'm probably going to see a lot of this through the lens of like the company I work for is a startup. And so like, first things first, like you need to be an out of the box thinker and you need to be able to pivot. Just because I mean, like our company is so young, it's about 2 years old. So there's still things that like, even internally, we're still trying to figure out. And there's not going to be a set process maybe for everything. And even maybe for more mature companies, like they're, still could be processes that need to be refined, and not everything's going to be laid out perfectly for you. And so you need to be able to adapt. Definitely with what Daniel said about being analytical, even beyond marketing, like I think you need to have analytical skills no matter what you're doing, because at the end of the day, like data doesn't lie. And if you are trying to sell something to someone or prove something or make a point, whatever it is, like, and you have numbers and information to back that up, like I don't know, I'm not gonna say 9 times out of 10, but like you're gonna have a way better chance of like getting to that end goal and what you want, like if you have that proof to back it up. I mean, definitely to be a good marketer, I think being a people person is super important. Again, like from the agency view, I have 8 or so different clients, and like I speak to every single client differently because you kind of have to adapt to their personality and how they want to communicate. Like I have certain clients who all they want to talk about is data. I have certain clients who all they want to know is that like they have me as like their support system and things like that. And so it kind of like lends to some of those soft skills of like also kind of being able to manipulate yourself to be the best representative of your company, of yourself, that you possibly can be to maintain all those relationships. So.
I would say as far as skills, so I want to be clear, I think I got a fantastic education at USD that has set me up very successfully. So when I say I don't think I got any concrete skills, I don't think it's because, you know, the professors weren't good or the content wasn't good. I think it's more about how you apply what you learn. For example, I think problem solving is a super important skill. You don't have a class on problem solving, but almost every single class in one way or another is teaching you how to problem solve and how to come up with solutions. So I think some of those, you know, soft skills that are not said intentionally at the beginning or on a curriculum or by the professor are skills that I feel like I did learn very well at USD. A couple of classes I wish I would have paid attention to more, which Daniel kind of alluded to, or not paid attention to, but asked more questions when I had the chance, was understanding finance and the financial terminology, because business acumen and being able to speak to the business and the financials will serve you so well. And you can't really learn business acumen necessarily. I mean, you know, in college you could learn about different businesses and understand them, but you know, you don't know where you're going to end up working. So when you get into the workplace, obviously having an understanding of the business and what drives their revenue and what they do well and what they're working on, who their competitors are, is super important just to, you know, elevate you in any conversation. And every quarter, you know, when we do our financials, and there's still acronyms that I have to Google every time because I don't remember. And I know for sure I was like taught them in Finance 101 or something like that. I'm not necessarily a numbers person, but all those things will apply even if you don't end up going into finance or accounting. Any manager is going to manage a budget, even if you manage one person or 10 people. So I think those are, you know, really important skills or terminology, stuff like that, that you can apply in any job.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with everything that's been said too before. Like all very like necessary things that like I feel like almost in any field you go into, just because having that knowledge and that basis. I think also another really important skill is like being a team player, and like knowing how to be a good team player is really important, because like you will run into people in the workplace that are individual contributors, and you'll learn more about that once you're there. And like you want to be in a team where like you can all actually depend on each other, and like having that skill set will make other people trust you more too in your organization and then want to partner with you more. So I think that's a skill that kind of just comes with working and like getting more experience with other people on other teams, and just having that thought process of like, okay, like what's the big idea of my organization? Like how am I going to push my organization forward? So really having that type of thought process is important, and not sometimes getting caught up in the day-to-day of like your task. I think like that skill of just like taking a step back and really thinking like how you can improve your team, how you can improve the organization, like how you're going to get that done, is a really important skill, and something that doesn't happen like every day that you use. But I think it's just that type of thinking that leaders in your organization do notice and take in consideration, you know, when they're deciding to like where they want you to go next and how they're going to help you get there too.
Alex, if I could just ask a question to kind of go along the lines of that. You know, oftentimes when the students are thinking about teamwork or team projects, they think about group projects in the classroom. And I know that for many, that's a nightmare, right? So how can someone outside of group projects develop those team player type of skill sets while in school?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think like just even partnering with people more in terms of like study groups, like, you know, getting together people more, of just being in more groups, learning how to communicate with people in groups is really important, because like clear communication is important when you're trying to like execute a project and like everyone know what their role is. So getting comfortable playing those roles and like knowing when to be the listener, knowing when to ask the questions, those types of things are, I think, really instrumental, especially when you start working. And if you start on a team, because I've started on a team, I've worked with multiple different people, and like really adjusting to their personalities and like learning what they need, I think has helped me be a team player, because I don't try to do one size fits all. I try to do, this is what this person needs, so I'm going to adjust my communication as I go. But then practicing that with your teachers and people around you that you work on assignments or different projects with.
Great, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to ask one last question, then we'll open it up for questions. An hour sure goes by quick. What is one tidbit that you wish you would have known before going into marketing or into your profession?
For me, I think two quick things. One, that confidence is key. Even if you don't fully know exactly what you're doing, it's okay to feel confident in your skills, to pick it up, to learn it, to run with it. Granted, you're obviously not going to know exactly, you know, how everything is done right away. So it's okay to ask questions, but being confident, whether it's in front of a client, whether it's in front of your boss, whether it's in front of whatever it may be, and then being honest about it. Like when you really don't know the answer to something, just owning up to that and saying like, hey, I need to figure this out, or hey, I need some help figuring this out. Especially early on, people are so willing to work with you. And then the other thing is that you don't have to love your job, like wholeheartedly every single day. So for example, like I love what I do, overarchingly, but some days are very difficult. And some days, you know, you may wake up and you're like, oh, it's going to be a tough day, and I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. But at the end of the day, like when you sit back and you realize like everything you've accomplished, everything you're doing, and the actual like job that you're doing, you probably will learn to love it or like realize how much you do love it. But it's okay if some days are tough and you're like, I don't know if I like this right now. It's okay to admit that to yourself, but then like you realize overarchingly, it's such a rewarding experience, and you actually love the people that you're with, the things that you're doing. But I guess, yeah, that tidbit is like, don't feel like every single day has to be perfect. Otherwise you're going to be disappointed, probably like every job you head into. But just like realize that you are making a difference. It is fun. It is exciting. So yeah.
Actually, Daniel's comment kind of like made me think of one, which is like, don't expect to get your dream job instantly, or like your dream internship instantly. And I don't want to like kind of be like, I don't know, bear bad news with that at all, but like you're gonna make switches. Like the first job that you take out of college is not going to be the one that you have for the rest of your life. Like the world just doesn't work like that anymore. And so just not being afraid to like jump into what you think is right at that time, but maybe a year and a half down the line, you're like, wait, this isn't right for me anymore, to like own that, accept that, understand that, and then like take the next step. It's exactly what I did. I graduated in 2017. My first job I had for about like a year, 7 months or so, and realized like no experience is bad experience. Like, let me make that clear. But just having that like self-awareness of like knowing like, wait a second, like this, whether it's like the culture or whether it's, you know, what the line of work that you're actually doing and like your day to day, just being able to recognize that. Because I think specifically me, and I know Kelly can probably attest to this, like I put a lot of pressure on myself to find like the perfect job that I wanted right out of school, and just know that like, you don't need to put that much pressure on yourself, and that like your opportunity, your time will come. Second to that, and more specifically kind of like to my agency experience, I took a really great course. I think it's just called Digital Marketing, with Justine Rapp, that really dove into Google AdWords and things like that, which was super helpful going into my line of work. But what I learned really quickly is, especially like at an agency, you use like probably 10 to 15 different types of programs, like Google Analytics being one of the first ones. There's so many types of email marketing programs, things like that. Like if you kind of build an awareness of the basics, like MailChimp and Klaviyo for email marketing, Google Analytics, Google AdWords, just getting like a sense of what those are about. By no means like do you need to be an expert entering like an entry-level job, but being able to say like, oh yeah, I've heard of those things, or like, oh, I know how they operate, to an employer who uses those types of like channels and services and things like that will definitely go a long way. And so there's articles, I mean, all over the place that talk about that kind of stuff. Like it's pretty easy to find. So I definitely recommend doing that.
I would say, I think I have like three things that come to mind. And the first one is that something I wish I would have known was that you are hired for a reason, even if you feel like you're not. And that being the most junior person there can actually be the most valuable. So similar to Alex, I always felt like, you know, I mean, still I feel like, well, actually maybe not anymore, but for maybe a year or two, I was like, always felt like I was the youngest one. I was the only one with an undergraduate, maybe, and not a grad degree. And still on my team, the rest of the people analysts all have grad degrees, and I would argue that I do my job just as well. Not to say a grad degree is not valuable, but you know, don't underestimate your knowledge, especially now. I feel like cultures at companies are changing so much. They want your perspective. They want to understand how you see it. Just because they're more senior, they've been there longer, doesn't mean that, you know, the way they're doing it and the way they think about it is the right way, and that you're, you know, kind of to what Daniel said, if you're confident, you know, they want to hear their perspective. That's why they bring new people in. That's why companies hire new talent all the time at all levels. But especially your knowledge, you know, never being in the workforce or, you know, only being at a few places is super valuable. And then I would say another thing I wish you would have known is that you own your brand from the second you start a job. And it's not to make it sound, you know, like scary. It's not something I thought about probably for the first few years, because I remember thinking, okay, well, what my manager does is what I should do, and the way he does things is the way I should do it at the time. And just realizing that obviously you want to learn from your manager, you want to learn from other people that have been there, but at the end of the day, you know, kind of to the other piece I was going to say, you own your career. So if you own your career, you own your brand. And advocating for yourself, building a brand that you're proud of, that you want to, you know, be, you know, what people think about when they think of you, is super important, and really, you know, it's easily, I feel like, to be influenced by other people, like your manager, like other people that have been there, and it could be all with the best intention, but at the end of the day, you know, your career and what you decide to do and your brand is really up to you. So kind of, you know, that mixed in with owning your career. Nobody is gonna be like, hey, Hannah, you think you're ready for a promotion? Think you're ready to try something new? I mean, you know, sometimes people get lucky. I have heard those stories, but, you know, typically, and, you know, company have rewards times and all these things, but, you know, typically you will be your, you know, your best advocate, and you know what you bring to the table more than anybody. And of course, you can always get help from others articulating that and all that, but, you know, just knowing that it's your career, it's your brand, and own it.
And I definitely agree with Hannah on the branding, because I think for me, like, that's something that I've discovered this past year. This is one of the things that, like, the past 6 months I've really had to get a better footing with, is branding is so important, especially in larger organizations, because I have colleagues all around the country. They never see me day to day. They only know me from work projects, and they only know what they hear about me. And those are two very, you know, small windows of opportunity to impress someone or not. And I think that's really important, depending on like how large your organization is. So I think branding is like very much key in like seeking out promotions or like more responsibilities at times, just because there's a big chance a lot of people aren't going to know you. And that's just because of, you know, the offices you work in, the exposure you have to them. So I think for me, that was something where I wish off the bat I had done things to nail that more, but I don't think it, you know, it's something where you have to do this the day you start. It's more like once you get the footing of the organization and know what to come, like what the process is like internally, those things kind of just, you learn from being there and having experience with people. And so I think branding for me is like the number one thing I've really tried to like identify and work on more within my organization.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I already have gotten one question, so for those of you that have questions for our panelists, please just privately chat me. One of the questions is, how did you get your first internship?
I could go first. Networking. I know it looks a little different now, but definitely just asking around. As I was headed into my senior year, I just kind of realized I probably should. So literally started asking around. I definitely was on LinkedIn, poking around. And then part of it was really realizing like, okay, what do I want to do, or what kind of job do I think I want to be in? And then just like reading like the job descriptions and the types of qualifications for like entry-level jobs, and realizing like I need to have some base layer of those in order to even get an internship or something of the similar sort. And so then it was like trying to figure out, does anybody at the school, you know, do any of the professors have connections with them? Do any people I know? And then going to networking events with some of the, like, meet the marketers and the, you know, meeting professionals in the space. And then finally someone reached out and was like, hey, I heard you were looking for XYZ opportunity. I know somebody who works at an agency and they're looking for some interns. And so then I just applied, and that's kind of how I got it. But it was definitely networking and then doing a lot of research into what kinds of skills I should have so that I could tailor my resume to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Daniel. My first internship experience was kind of unique in that I basically started around like asking in my networks. I know, I mean, like, I personally am not going to tell you to just like go on LinkedIn and start messaging people that you've never met before, asking for jobs right off the bat. That can be daunting, and like you by no means have to jump in that way. So what I did was like I utilized the upperclassmen in my sorority. I utilized the Career Development Center and my professors. Like there are networks that are already like that you're obviously very comfortable with already that you can start with and then grow from there. Because everyone knows someone who knows someone. So my internship actually my first two actually came from recommendations in my sorority. One person who had worked at that agency prior. And the thing is when I reached out to her about it and she reached out to her connections at the agency, they weren't even hiring at the time. But I said like, hey, can I just talk to you? Can we get a coffee? Like I just, again, like I'm clearly new to this. I'm going into my senior year. I think I want to work at an agency, but I'm not sure. And someone was like, yeah, for sure. Like, let's talk. And that conversation didn't end with anything spectacular. Like I learned a lot, but he didn't say like, you know, we have availability or anything like that. I just kind of was excited about the information that I received. And then literally about a week or two later, I got a phone call from that same guy who said like, okay, yeah, so we're actually creating an intern program. Like, we'd like to bring you in for an interview. And that stemmed from just me like reaching out, even though maybe there wasn't going to be a set in stone opportunity there, just to like test the waters and see. It doesn't hurt to just ask and have a conversation. So
I would say, just to add on one more thing, is, you know, for me personally, I found that it took a lot of time and a lot of effort. The sooner you start, the better. I think maybe I probably didn't start soon enough, but you know, definitely utilize your network. I don't think I did that enough, but also remember, I mean, personally for me, I think I was always comparing to myself, oh, somebody knows somebody and their dad, you know, gave them a job, or, you know, my parents are in the medical field. It's very different, doesn't work like this. And you know, I thought, oh my gosh, everyone has these big name internships. I'm never going to get a job after college because I have an internship at a company that nobody knows. What I realized is that taking that internship and that experience is what got me my job. And so don't, you know, obviously, you know, try and find, you know, your dream internship, go after, you know, everything, apply, use your network, but also know that where you intern is not going to solely determine your career. So I think, you know, some experience is better than no experience. And for me, it was my experience at this, you know, no-name place that got me my job. So, you know, I would say that if you put the work in and, you know, obviously utilize all your resources, USD has a ton of them. And then, you know, an internship isn't the end of the world. Like, you can still have a career, and actually a very different one, at a variety of companies afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with internships too, it's like you might get in them and like really not like them, but like that's okay, because like having a bad experience or like knowing you don't want to do something, it's still good in this because you know you want more. I think it's all about like talking to people and like figuring out what they do in their jobs. Would you see yourself doing that? Do you even have like skills that align with that you're comfortable with, or like, you know, want to be in that industry? And just like really knowing what you want is important. So like taking an internship that like you do have relative interest in is great, but if it's not the dream one, it's fine. Like it's really not about that at the end of the day. It's about finding out, do you actually like doing this or not? Because you'd rather get something that's 10 weeks that you don't love, but be able to pivot into something that's going to be a year, usually when you first start out, you know, before you leave, that you can manage for a year that you actually like instead of just tolerate. So I think that's really important to keep in mind with internships too, is just getting your foot in the door, getting the experience, but like, what are you going to do with that experience after you leave to at least find what you really would enjoy to do for a year?
Thank you. So the next question is about COVID times. So all college students on the call, you know, we know it's important to be learning about what you want to do and network. What advice do you have of how students can do those things when we're all at home on Zoom calls?
I have found, so part of my job is a lot of outreach and communication. So I guess one of the things I really love about my job is like getting to connect with some of like the world's biggest brands. And so before COVID, it was actually sometimes a little bit hard to connect with them because everyone was like out of like in the office, having to manage like 1,000 different things, and communication sometimes like was not through email for them, and maybe their job just didn't require them to communicate like over email or Zoom or anything like that. I have found that during this time, a lot of people are more receptive to jumping on Zoom calls and connecting over email, especially on LinkedIn. People are super active. So it may seem tough, but I do think that right now is actually a great time to connect with people that you've been wanting to connect with, or maybe someone that you reached out to in the past and did not get back to you for whatever reason, whether they were busy or they didn't see it, whatever it may be. A lot of people are now so much more connected and online and keeping tabs on what's going on, that it might be easier to reach them. And then, yeah, don't be afraid to do kind of like this. Just hop on a Zoom call. I've seen people reach out and say like, hey, can I buy you, like, can I Grubhub you something? And then can we just hop on for lunch and just chat about whatever it may be? Obviously you don't have to do that, but that was a very like interesting strategy that somebody did. I just think people are more open to it, and don't be afraid right now, because COVID has brought a lot of people together online, and it's a great time to connect, even if it's across the nation.
Yeah, I feel for you guys, because I'm thinking like, I'm thankful that like I have a job right now and I'm secure. Like I am working from my kitchen table, but like it's cool. I'm making it work. So I can only imagine like what the internship or like job search is looking like right now. But I think the like silver lining here is obviously we don't know when, but like this will pass and like this, we will come out of this. And so I think a really important thing to know is like maybe the internship market and the job market feels slim, but there is honestly no limit on like how many connections you can build right now, even if companies aren't hiring, even just getting like your name out there, because there's going to be a time where they are going to start hiring again. I know like my company, for instance, is definitely not hiring right now. Like we're still trying to rebuild after like the past few months, but maybe give us, 3-4 more months and I'm sure we'll be back to like kind of regular hiring again. And so I think just putting yourself out there and making people, remember you, even though there may not be opportunities right now, like they will come again. So I think just like being able to handle that with grace and knowing that like we're going to get through it, and just like keeping as much of a positive attitude as you can is really going to help you out, because yeah, like I said, like there is no limit on making connections right now. So you should definitely take full advantage of it.
I would say, kind of to tag along to that, definitely reach out. I would say specifically when you do reach out, I don't think anyone ever told me this, maybe this is obvious now. When you reach out to someone, don't just say, oh, hey, I saw your profile, I'd love to learn more about your job. Cool. It's like, that's great, but I'm managing like deadlines and meetings. I'm literally staring at the computer screen all day long. Like, not that I don't care about you because you said that, but say, I'd love to learn more. Is there a time that works? Is there a week that works? Does, I don't know, 3 p.m. at so-and-so work? Or can I grab 30 minutes when works for you? Like, definitely make it easy for people when you reach out, because it's not like people don't respond. It's typically not because they don't want to help you. It's just that, like I found for whatever reason, ever since this COVID time, my workload has increased by what feels like 50%. And so I feel like it's been busier and busier than ever. But I would still love to talk about my job and not actually have to like do a PowerPoint deck. So talk to somebody and help them out. So, and then I would say also kind of to what Hannah said, like, Adobe isn't hiring right now. If you, reach out to me and said, oh, what are the positions? I would say, don't think so much about, oh, what are the positions that are open now? But I would take the time to learn about people's jobs. What is the day-to-day like? Have a candid conversation. I think that's what's great, is that this isn't a formal interview. Obviously, don't call someone and be like, oh, hey, by the way, I really don't want to work, but I want to get paid. I mean, but that's like obvious, right? So, manage your brand still, but have those candid conversations. Ask the questions about, the things that you maybe don't want to ask in the interview, and just understand what different jobs are like. And, like what was said before, companies are not hiring now, but they will hire. I mean, this is, and people also understand the times that we're in. So, they're not going to look at your resume and go, oh my gosh, you didn't get a job right away. What happened to you? People will, this is obviously a, historic global pandemic. So I would say take the time to really learn about what other people's jobs are like, leave an impression, and, people will remember that and they'll call you when there's a position.
And I definitely agree. I think right now it's hard to get an internship because a lot of places are doing hiring freezes. It just doesn't make sense for the companies to onboard people they don't know if they can even pay yet. So I wouldn't feel a lot of pressure to find one this summer, because I don't think my assumption is not going to be a huge expectation for people to have, because everyone knows what's happening and how damaging this is to the economy and businesses. So I think, not putting that pressure on yourself right now is really important. And this is a great time to reach out and network with people, and, going through those phone calls and calling people that you meet via LinkedIn and through your network. Like, it can be tasking, but the thing is, all those conversations prepare you for an interview eventually. Because when you start getting on those phone screenings, you start getting in those video camera rooms, or like going actually in person, if that happens, like you're going to know what to say. You're going to know like how you respond to certain questions and like what type of topics make you uncomfortable. And then you can begin working really on tailoring your answers when you get the interview. And that's a process in itself that's really hard as a student, I think, to pivot into, because you're not used to speaking the way you do in interviews. Honestly, it's conversational, but it's not, because they're looking for you to say certain words. And so I think getting into that flow is really important. You can do that through outreach, and then just looking at like maybe getting different certifications or skills that you can do at home. Because if you can say like, I know how to build macros, I know how to do this, like that's huge for someone who's entry level. That's not always what's guaranteed for someone who's coming to a first job, that they have those Excel skills. So I think knowing like where you're going to try going and seeing the things you can do on your end and like the extra homework you can do could be really, it could really set you outside of the pack when you go applying for a job and show what you did during this time period instead of just staying at home.
Thank you. I think we're just we have a lot of questions coming. I'm just going to squeeze in one more. I think this is a good one. How influential has the choice of your minor been in working in marketing?
I'll go quick. I do think they make a huge impact. I actually was a double major in theology, which is completely different. But what it did help with was the writing aspect. Often marketing requires a lot of writing and just content. So I do think it plays a large role. A lot of the people that I like connect with on a daily basis always talk about their minor being finance or accounting and how much that helps them. I do think it plays a big role if you have the opportunity, but don't feel the pressure if you rather focus on one thing and do really well in that one thing.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I was an accounting minor, and I kind of almost felt obligated to be an accounting minor because I was like, oh, okay, I want to be in marketing, I want to be in this creative field, but I also want to show people that I'm good with numbers and I'm like smart. And so I think an accounting like minor is the way to go. Honestly, it was a talking point more than anything else in interviews and things like that. I think I kind of got my like idea across of like, yeah, look at me, like left brain and right brain, like I can do it all. But was it totally necessary? Like, I don't think so. My advice, honestly, for choosing a minor is just pick something that you do enjoy and like you do want to like have that like extra little segment of, you know, knowledge or information or whatever. I mean, not that I regret my decision. I just don't know if I was like looking at it totally in the right lens because like I said, right now it's really just like a talking point in interviews more than anything else. So
I would say really quickly that I don't have a strong opinion about the minor thing of the double major in international business and marketing. I would say for any job, it's how you tell the story. So I can't really speak to specific marketing skills, but what you choose, be able to tell a story. People like a story about anything. And it's really what helps build your brand. So I would say just know how to explain what you chose and why. Make it compelling.
Yeah, and I'd say my major was business economics. My minor was supply chain. Like, you know, it wasn't anything marketing related. People would ask me about it. It was a story I told. I said, I know how to speak to numbers because I learned how to do it in my academic experience. So I think it's exactly what Hannah said, speaking to that and spinning it as a story, you know, because we don't all have like very clear reasons why we pick majors sometimes. It's just what we're interested in.
Well, thank you so much. Just so everyone knows that we have recorded this Zoom call. So for those of you that have friends that might also be interested, we'll be posting it soon. Daniel, Hannah, and Alex, thank you so much for your time. Not only is it wonderful to see your faces, I miss working with all of you, but the information that you gave was just so fruitful. I know in working with students, a lot of what their concerns are, all of you have addressed today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you inviting us, and this is a pleasure. Obviously, a big fan of USD. Happy to connect in any way I can. So yeah, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on it daily, connecting with people, communicating with people, and happy to intro anyone if they have questions. Happy to talk about the e-commerce space, branding space, whatever it may be.
Cool. Thank you, Daniel.